The emergency klaxons screamed through the research station's corridors, their shrill wail enough to make the Zenthari crew cover their auditory membranes in distress. Dr. Vexlar, the station's chief medical officer, clutched the emergency antidote kit against his thorax as he sprinted toward the xenobiology lab, his 6 legs moving in perfect synchronization. Human down. Human potentially poisoned. The intercom blared in Standard Galactic. Vexlar's compound eyes widened in horror. The humans, those fragile water-based mammals that the Galactic Council had only recently made contact with, were notoriously delicate. Their homeworld, Earth, was classified as a Class 7 death world, but that designation seemed almost generous considering how easily humans succumb to atmospheric variations, temperature changes, and dietary mistakes. The lab doors hissed open, and Vexlar burst inside, antidote injector raised and ready. What he saw made his circulatory system freeze. Alice Chen, the human xenobotanist, sat casually at her workstation, her legs crossed, while Carson Mitchell, the human engineer, leaned against the counter beside her. Between them sat a basket filled with what the crew had come to call death apples, the mortis fruit from Kepler 442b, whose crimson skin contained enough cyanogenic compounds to kill most carbon-based life forms within minutes. Carson was mid-bite into one of the fruits, juice running down his chin. He looked up at the medical officer with mild curiosity, his brown eyes blinking slowly. "Oh, hey, Doc," Carson said through a mouthful of death apple, his words slightly muffled. "What's up?" Vexlar's translator unit struggled to process his response, producing a series of confused chirps before finally managing, You're eating the mortis fruit. The death apple. The toxicity levels. Yeah, they're pretty good," Alice interrupted, reaching for another fruit from the basket. She held it up to the light, examining its deep red color with professional interest. "A bit tart, but Carson likes them. Reminds him of cherries, apparently. Antidote. You need the antidote." Vexlar rushed forward, nearly tripping over his own legs in his haste. Carson swallowed his bite and tilted his head, genuinely confused. "Antidote for what?" The medical officer's mandibles clicked in distress. "The death apple. The cyanide compounds. The toxins that dissolve the exoskeleton of a Krillian security officer in under 3 minutes." Alice and Carson exchanged glances. Alice took a deliberate bite of her death apple, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed before responding. "Oh, you mean these?" "Yeah, they've got some cyanogenic glycosides. Pretty standard for earth fruits in the Rosaceae family, actually." "Standard?" Vexlar's voice rose 3 octaves. "Sure," Carson said, finishing his fruit and tossing the core into the recycling unit. "Apples, cherries, peaches, apricots, they all have cyanide compounds in their seeds or pits. We've been eating them for thousands of years." Vexlar's legs gave out and he collapsed onto a nearby chair, his antidote kit clattering to the floor. "But the toxicological analysis. The readings showed concentrations that would be lethal to 93% of known sapient species." "Well, yeah," Alice said, wiping juice from her mouth with the back of her hand. "But humans aren't most species. Our livers produce an enzyme called rhodinase that converts cyanide into thiocyanate, which we just pee out. It's not a big deal unless you eat, like, a ridiculous amount." She paused, glancing at the basket, which was now significantly depleted. Okay, we might have gone a bit overboard today." Carson grinned sheepishly. "In our defense, they really do taste good. Plus, we've been in space for 4 months. Fresh fruit is fresh fruit." Vexlar's translator struggled to convey his utter bewilderment. The other members of the xenobiology team had gathered at the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Shara, a Yulani researcher whose species could only consume carefully processed nutrient slurries, stared at the humans with her large luminescent eyes. "You mean to tell me," Shara said slowly, "that humans regularly consume compounds that would kill the rest of us, and you consider this normal?" "Pretty much," Alice confirmed. She stood up and walked to the data terminal, pulling up her research notes. "Actually, that's what makes these death apples so interesting for my research. They're remarkably similar to Earth plants, convergent evolution at its finest. The cyanogenic glycosides probably evolved as a defense mechanism against herbivores, just like on Earth." Carson reached for another fruit, but Alice swatted his hand away. "Okay, maybe we should slow down. Even humans can get cyanide poisoning if we overdo it." "Spoil sport," Carson muttered, but he withdrew his hand. Vexlar finally managed to stand, his legs still trembling. I need to update the human dietary database immediately and file a report with the Galactic Council and possibly reconsider my career choices. Sorry for the scare, Doc, Carson said, looking genuinely apologetic. We probably should have mentioned we were going to sample the mortis fruit. It just didn't occur to us that it would be dangerous. Well, dangerous to us, I mean. Alice nodded in agreement. Yeah, our bad. But hey, on the bright side, this means humans can potentially consume food sources that other species can't. Could be useful for colony planning. Vexillar's antennae drooped in resignation. Humans, he said, with the tone of someone who had just witnessed something fundamentally incomprehensible, are terrifying. Carson laughed and clapped the medical officer on what might have been his shoulder. Xenoanatomy was still confusing. Aw, come on, Doc, we're not that bad. You literally just poisoned yourselves for pleasure, Vexillar pointed out. Well, when you put it that way. Alice grinned as the medical officer shuffled out of the lab, still muttering about updating protocols and filing reports. Carson turned to Alice with a mischievous glint in his eye. So, you think we should tell them about chocolate? Alice considered for a moment, then shook her head. Let's give them a few more weeks to recover from this one first. Fair enough.